Hello everyone, I am the storyteller, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching now? Get comfortable and relax. We heard a voice, then my stepsister got stuck. My stepdad, Carl, hates me. There's just no other way to put it. Matt, if you don't like it, go and live with your dad, Carl would yell, squinting at me through his wire-rimmed glasses, arms folded. I don't know where he is, though. I don't know him. He left when I was 7, I'd reply. That's not my problem, is it? I'm the breadwinner in this household, so if you want to live here, you'll do as I say. The chore schedule is strict. Sweeping, doing the dishes, washing the car, dusting, vacuuming. Invariably, Carl would find some fault with the quality of my work and call a house meeting to make clear that the piece of gravel he found on the kitchen floor was not acceptable. Had I even done the chores at all? Or was I lying? My mom would sit there, eyes downcast, letting him get through his spiel. Evie, his daughter, my stepsister, would hover by the doorway, waiting to dash out of the room when he'd had his say. I learned long ago that there is no way to win the argument, so I'm deferential and apologize and say it'll never happen again. But it will. When he's out at his job as a mobile mechanic, I say as much to my mom, and she's well aware. He has his flaws, but he's practical, and in his heart, he's good. He's been the closest thing you've had to a father, Matt. He took that responsibility when he didn't have to, she'd say soothingly. In your heart, you're good, but you don't treat Evie like he treats me, I'd respond. Evie has a mother who shares the burden. It isn't my fault my dad ran away. That's how the conversation goes, around and around in circles. In fairness, my stepdad can be a dick to Evie too. He restricts our internet access. He doesn't let us have sugary snacks. He makes us lock our phones away in a cupboard at 9 p.m. sharp and sends us to bed. He bangs on the bathroom door if he deems we've been in the shower too long. As a result, Evie and I have bonded. The austere rules push us together, and we've got a genuine friendship. She appreciates that I'm more hard done by, so she'll smuggle me biscuits and tell me the Wi-Fi password, if she's managed to weasel the information out of Carl. Needless to say, the rules are subject to a degree of flexibility. He buys chocolate biscuits and Doritos for himself and can munch a whole bag in a night, spilling crumbs over the sofa he's sprawled out on. I can hear the TV blaring till midnight sometimes, the drone being broken only by his guffaws. Strict and baleful as he is, he has never laid a finger on any of us. Instead, he smashes objects and writes notes in a capitalized font on the back of envelopes for me to discover in the morning. He screams and shouts in my face, sending the sour stench of his breath my way. I wonder if he's trying to provoke me to hit him, which would be absurd. He's pushing 2 meters tall and heavy-set, and I'm a skinny 17-year-old who's far more interested in reading about battles than fighting them. I'm used to his dramatic outbursts now, so that's why yesterday was so weird. Carl was trying to fix the pipes under the kitchen sink, while Evie pressed him for extra pocket money. He was grumbling and largely ignoring her until she mentioned something about the chest in the basement. Carl stopped his tinkering and slid out from under the counter. He towered over Evie, ominously silent. I was studying at the kitchen table, but stopped to watch. Carl's face, usually so snarling and pained when he was angry, was utterly blank. "What did you say?" he whispered. I was just joking. I said I could sell that old chest in the basement to get some pocket money. I'll say this once, Evie, you leave my chest alone. His eyes, cold as frozen planets, bore into Evie's for a moment longer. Then he went back to work. Evie left the room sobbing. I followed her up to her bedroom, where she was crying into one of her old teddies. I thought I'd be doing him a favor. It's full of his army clothes. People buy that sort of stuff nowadays, don't they? And it'd clear some space. I was trying to be nice. I put my arm around her. I know, Evie, I said. 2 years younger than me and less beaten down, Evie's heart was more open to assault. Still, the coldness of Carl's fury had shocked me. Fuck him! Fuck him! Fuck him! She screamed into her teddy. Say, Evie, shall we see what's in Carl's chest tonight? 3 a.m. She looked at me with vengeful, red-rimmed eyes and nodded. I played on her heightened emotions a little, I'll admit. But the way Carl reacted had me genuinely worried about what he had in that chest. If it was anything that could endanger my mom or Evie, I had to know. The evening passed. Evie and I completed our chores, and I read for an hour before surrendering my mobile phone. I said goodnight to Carl and my mom, and only got one response. It's not worth pointing out who ignored me and who replied. I climbed the stairs and closed my bedroom door. It was far too early to sleep, despite what Carl thought, so I read by lamplight every night until my eyes got tired. The only thing to be wary of were slow creaking noises that might indicate Carl was creeping up the stairs. Reading in bedrooms was also banned, and publicly, neither me nor Evie did it. However, Carl had his suspicions, so he'd climb with stealth to a certain point on the stairs to check for a glow beneath either of our bedroom doors. If he saw light, he'd burst into the room hoping to catch us. Therefore, I'd preemptively switch off the lamp and pretend to be asleep at the sound of any unusual noise. Once a military man, always a military man, I guess. Carl had spent a decade in the Army as an engineer. He'd been deployed multiple times, but never to an active theater of war. Bowing to his ex-wife's demands, he'd returned to civilian life a year after Evie's birth. Everything I'd been able to glean seemed to indicate Carl had enjoyed his time in the military. The problem is that he never talks about it. He smiles absently, and his eyes go somewhere far away. What had he seen? What had he done? I woke to a gentle tapping at the door. It was time. "Follow my steps," Evie whispered. She'd charted the least creaky path down the stairs, it seemed. We reached the stone slabs of the kitchen floor and gently opened the basement door, careful of squealing hinges. I closed the door behind us and turned on the flickering light. Pressing against the dusty, cobweb-ridden walls, we descended. The basement itself was cramped and filled with tools, shelves, bicycles, shoes, boxes. Evie pulled a picnic blanket off of a bulky mass to reveal a mahogany chest that was curiously dust-free. "He comes down here most nights, you know," she said. "Why?" Evie shrugged and nudged a coded padlock. "Shit. Do you know the code?" I said. "Maybe," Evie said, before twisting 4 numbers into the padlock. It clicked open. "Huh, Dad's Army serial number. It's full of Army crap, so I assumed that'd be it." "How do you know it's full of Army crap?" I asked. "He told me once, duh. Or at least I think he did. Let's open it and find out." The lid was heavier than we expected. It was 4 inches thick and must have been full of lead. I heaved at one side and Evie heaved at the other until we got it up. Inside, there were no combat fatigues, no dog tags, no boots. It was empty except for 2 objects, a long black cushion and a human jawbone. "Who's there?" Evie and I stared at each other, then back at the jawbone. "Boy? Girl? Speak." "Can you hear a voice?" I asked Evie. "Yeah. This isn't Army stuff. I don't know what this is." I heard a hollow laugh before the voice continued. "He wouldn't have told you about me, his charnel confidant. Such is his shame, for he slew me long ago, upon a field far from here." "I don't like it," Evie said. "Who killed you?" I asked the bone. "Her father." "My dad wouldn't kill anyone." "That's a lie," Evie wailed. "Shh. You'll wake them," I whispered. "I don't like this. He comes here every night to pray and beg and weep, just as his spawn does. He's certain it was an accident. A firing range mishap, nothing more. Do you believe him? Might he do it again?" "I hate this," Evie said, and went to close the lid, but I held her back, chewing my lip. "Are we in danger?" I asked, and that chilly laugh rattled through my head again. Evie broke my grip and lunged for the jawbone perched on the black cushion. "You dare to touch me!" The chest lid slammed shut on Evie's right arm, halfway along the bicep, shattering the bone. She let out half a scream before passing out and sliding down the side of the chest. A grisly grinding sound came from her trapped arm as it twisted further. A cold sweat burst out all over my body, and I sprang into action, heaving Evie back up from where she'd fallen. "Let her out! Let her out!" The voice had ceased to reply. Summoning all my strength, I squatted down and pressed the lid up. It didn't budge. I adjusted my grip and pushed with everything I had. A dark centimeter grew into 2, then 3, then 4. I glimpsed that grinning bone perched on black velvet before Evie's mangled arm was free, and she slid back onto the basement floor. I let the lid thud shut. I helped her up the basement stairs, fully intending to wake my mom and Carl up because Evie needed to go to hospital. She was delirious and muttering. When we emerged, she looked at me, her face white as chalk. "Run up the stairs, I was sleepwalking. I fell," she said. It took me a moment to realize what she was doing. Carl would question my role in his daughter's injury. Despite her agony, she'd hatched a plan to protect me from his wrath. I nodded and stamped up the stairs as loud as I could before dashing into my bedroom and closing the door. I leapt into bed just as Evie started yelling from the foot of the stairs. Today has been quiet with everyone at the hospital. At some point, I'll go into the basement and cover the chest with the picnic blanket and sweep some dust around to hide any footprints. I just don't feel like it yet. I'm quite happy rocking back and forth on my bed for now, thinking, what the fuck happened last night? My mom has always been a neat freak, but lately she's taken it too far. My mother has always been overly obsessed with cleaning, and I'm not just talking about the house. I mean everything. Her car, my clothes, the insides of her ears. Hell, even the cat gets a thorough scrubbing at least once a week. Mom's fixation on cleaning has always been a bit of a thorn in my side, but it used to be somewhat manageable. Now I'm downright terrified of what it's done to my mother. "Mom, please, let me help you with this. You've had a long day." "No," Mom replied, refusing to take her eyes off the spot she was scrubbing on the kitchen floor. "You're not thorough enough. You know that." I sighed. It was a very blunt way to put it, but she wasn't wrong. Mom expected each tile to be absolutely spotless, and I just didn't have the time nor the dedication to make that happen. Still, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a little bummed out about it. All I wanted was to spend a little quality time with her, even if it meant relentlessly cleansing the already pristine floors. "Okay, I'll be up in my room then," I said, heading for the stairs. I still don't know what made me do it. Maybe it was due to frustration, or resentment, or a primal need for attention. Maybe it was a mix of the three. What I do know is that what I said next was the catalyst for Mom's downward spiral. It doesn't matter how clean the house is, it won't make Dad come back home. Instant regret washed over me the moment the words left my lips. Mom froze, staring holes into the shimmering tile before her. Her eyes began to water, and a deep sense of guilt settled into my stomach. I know. A long, tense silence followed. My brain scrambled for the right words to say. Anything to fix what I'd done. But each time I opened my mouth to speak, the apology died on my tongue. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it," I finally squeaked out, tears welling in my own eyes. Mom didn't respond. She just continued solemnly scrubbing away at stains that I couldn't see, acting as if I'd never said anything at all. Mom was different after that incident, more closed off. Before, when I would come home from school, she would take a moment to greet me and ask how my day was. I always looked forward to that. Now she doesn't give me so much as a wave. And to top it all off, Mom's daily cleaning spree escalated from intense to out of control. She started vehemently cleansing everything in the house 2 days ago, and she hasn't stopped since. I first noticed it when I arrived home from class. The moment I walked through the door yesterday, Mom was on me like white on rice. She snatched the backpack from my grasp and began furiously wiping it down. Good to see you too, Mom." She didn't reply, her eyes laser focused on my bag. Honestly, she was beginning to frighten me. I knew that what I'd said had struck a nerve, but I didn't think Mom was petty enough to ignore me entirely. Yes, I screwed up, but I didn't deserve to be shunned. Mom didn't bother making dinner that evening. She was too busy running my clothes through the wash for the 4th time that day. It was as if Mom thought I had some kind of infectious disease, and the only way to prevent it from spreading was to clean my belongings like there was no tomorrow. I decided to try my best to ignore it. Surely after enough time, Mom would return to her normal self. She had to, right? I wanted to believe that, but I really didn't know. So I figured it couldn't hurt to buy her something to show how sorry I was. After all, Mom was always a sucker for gifts. The next day on my way home from school, I made a little detour. I stopped off at a local florist and I bought the prettiest bouquet of roses that my jobless teenage self could afford. As basic as it is, red roses are Mom's favorites. I grinned like the Cheshire Cat the entire walk home, eagerly awaiting Mom's response to my present. I sauntered through the door, armed with my random expression of kindness, and I marched straight up to my mother. She was busy dusting the tops of the kitchen cabinets, so she didn't see me right away. "Mom, I'm home." Silence. She didn't even turn to look at me. I sighed. I didn't want it to have to come to this. "Mom, I bought you something," I shouted, waving the flowers in what I hoped was her peripheral vision. That did the trick. "Oh, hello, honey. I didn't hear you come in." "Are those for me?" she asked, exaggeratedly placing her hand over her heart. "Yep, I wanted to apologize. For a couple days ago, I shouldn't have said that, I'm sorry." I could feel hot tears stinging at my eyes. I may have had to stoop as low as to buy my mother's love, but my apology was genuine. "It's okay, Gemma. I know you didn't mean it," Mom said, hopping down from the counter and wrapping me in a massive bear hug. I won't lie, I may have shed a tear or two. I'd really needed that. Mom smiled warmly at me when she finally pulled away. My heart swelled with relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt like things were going to be okay. How wrong I was. I watched as Mom's gaze broke from mine and fell to the roses, still clutched between my fingers. Her welcoming visage melted, and a deep frown replaced her affectionate grin. "Sweetie, the thorns. You're bleeding." I glanced down, and sure enough, she was right. A small rivulet of crimson was traveling from the back of my hand down to my wrist. I must have been so caught up in the moment that I didn't feel it. "Let me clean that up for you." "We wouldn't want it dripping onto the floor, now would we?" Mom said, snatching a wet rag from the sink. I placed the bouquet onto the counter and began backing away. No, Mom, it's fine, really. I'll just go to the bathroom and..." "Nonsense, I'll take care of it. Let me see." "Mom, it's okay, I can handle it." "Gemma, let me see it." Mom gritted her teeth and clutched the rag so tightly that a few droplets of sink water fell to the floor. "All right," I said, hoping not to anger her any further. "That's a good girl," Mom replied, snatching my wrist. She began rubbing ferociously, wiping at the bloody spot like it was a deadly virus that needed to be eradicated. I released a weak whimper as she continued, unrelenting. "Mom, stop! That hurts," I whined, tugging against her grip. "Just a little bit more." "No, let go of me," I shouted, ripping my arm away. I glanced down at my hand to find that Mom had only made it worse. My skin stung, and I could tell that the abrasion had spread as a direct result of Mom's obsessive cleansing. "Get back over here. I wasn't done yet," Mom ordered, advancing toward me. I hesitantly met her stare, and my heart dropped. Mom's eyes were wild. They looked hungry, predatory, like a rabid animal ready to tear into its prey. I slowly backed into the hallway. I didn't know what to do. I had never seen her like that before. "Mom, please, you're scaring me." My voice sounded so brittle. In that moment, I felt like a scared, defenseless little girl again, and that terrified me. "Oh, honey, there's nothing to be afraid of. Mommy won't hurt you. Just come here, and I can make all the pain go away." For a second, Mom's manic expression faded. I could sense the nurturing, loving parent that I once knew. I almost returned to her, but then she lunged for me. I sidestepped her and bolted for the stairs. I could hear her screaming at me all the while. "Come here, you disrespectful little shit. I will not tolerate this kind of behavior. You get your ass back down here now, young lady. If I have to come up there, mark my words, you will regret it." Tears trickled down my cheeks as I flew up the steps and locked myself in my room. I shoved my dresser in front of the door, barricading myself inside. I had never seen Mom in such a volatile state, and I had no idea what she was capable of. That's where I am now. I didn't want it to have to come to this, but I think I'm going to have to call the police. My heart is racing as I type this out. And to make matters worse, I found a letter where my dresser had been. I think someone wanted me to find it. My name had been hastily scrawled across the front, and it looked old. With trembling hands, I opened the letter and read its contents. "Gemma, I'm sorry for doing this to you and your mother. I love you more than anything in the entire world, but I couldn't stay with her any longer. I'm a coward for that, but I had to leave for my own safety. This may sound insane, but you need to know. A few years after you were born, we were both in a dark place. I was drinking heavily and your mother had turned to the occult. She ended up being possessed by a demonic entity. It reacts to the sight of blood. Whatever you do, never show her if you're bleeding. It will send her into a manic frenzy. Please stay safe and know that I will always love you. Yours, Dad. I wish I would have found the letter sooner. It might be too late for me now, because I can smell potent cleaning chemicals and bleach wafting through the cracks in the door. And Mom is calling in a sickly sweet voice. Gemma, please come out. I don't mean any harm. All I want is to scrub all that filthy flesh and blood away from your bones. My sister died, but she didn't leave. My little sister Ella died a year ago. She was only 12. The doctors said it was natural causes, but there was nothing natural about what happened to her. The truth is, our family killed her, slowly, over years of cruelty. It wasn't sudden, but a slow, deliberate breakdown of her spirit, of her soul. They broke her. Our father died when we were young, and my sister and I were taken in by his side of the family. It was supposed to be temporary until our mother could get back on her feet, but it wasn't. Ella suffered the most. My father's family, my uncle, aunt, cousins, hated us. They hated her. They were monsters, but they wore the faces of family. The worst part? I couldn't do anything to stop it. I tried to protect Ella, but I was just a kid, too. She'd get locked in the basement for days, the door clicking shut behind her, while my aunt turned the key with a smile. Sometimes they'd forget to feed her. Other times they'd do it on purpose. It wasn't just the physical abuse, it was the torment, the things they said to her. They loved to make her feel small, powerless. I remember seeing her eyes when they told her she wasn't worth anything, that no one would miss her if she disappeared. Her eyes went empty, dead. I didn't realize that, in a way, she had already died long before her heart stopped. Ella's death was a relief to them, a way to erase their guilt, bury their sins. I think they believed deep down that once she was gone, all the things they had done would be buried with her. They never expected what would happen next. At the funeral, something strange happened. Our mother, broken, hollow, not really there, stood apart from the rest of the family. She wasn't crying. She hadn't cried since the day Ella died. I watched her walk up to the casket, her hands trembling as she touched Ella's cold face. For a moment, it looked like she was about to break down, but she didn't. Instead, she leaned over Ella's still body and whispered something into her ear. I wasn't close enough to hear it, but I saw the look in her eyes. I'll never forget that look. It was unsettling, like she was speaking to someone she knew would hear her, someone who wasn't really gone. Later that night, I asked her what she whispered. At first, she didn't answer. She just stared at me, her expression unreadable. But then, in a voice that was barely a whisper, she told me, I told her to avenge me. I didn't understand what she meant at the time. I thought it was just her grief talking. After all, the family had taken everything from us. I thought she was just angry, broken. But now, looking back, I realize it was something much darker. The first sign that something was wrong happened the night after the funeral. It started with the sounds. It was subtle at first, soft whispers that seemed to come from the walls, like distant voices carried on the wind. But the house was still. There was no wind. I remember standing in the hallway holding my breath, listening. It wasn't random noise. It was too clear, too deliberate. You know what you did? At first, I thought it was my imagination. I told myself I was just hearing things, but the whispers grew louder each night. They weren't coming from outside. They were inside the house, crawling through the cracks in the walls, echoing in the corners. Sometimes I'd catch a word or two, but other times it was just the soft, almost pleading sound of a voice I couldn't place. But the others heard it too. My uncle, the cruelest of them all, was the first to crack. He began waking up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, screaming about seeing something in his room. He swore that Ella was standing at the foot of his bed, watching him. "She's not gone," he'd mutter to himself during the day, pacing back and forth. His eyes were wild, sunken, like he hadn't slept in weeks. "She's still here." No one believed him. They thought he was losing his mind. But I believed him, because I saw her too. It started small. Out of the corner of my eye, I'd catch glimpses of her, just for a second, standing in doorways or reflected in windows. She was never close, never fully there, but it was her. I know it was. Her face was pale, hollow, and her eyes, they weren't the same. They were dark, like empty pits, staring back at me. Her expression never changed. It was like she was waiting for something, or someone. I tried to ignore it, tried to convince myself that it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But deep down I knew. Ella wasn't resting. She was waiting. Then the scratches started. It was late one night when I heard it. A slow, deliberate scraping sound, like nails dragging across the walls. It came from inside the house, from the basement, where they used to lock her away. I wanted to believe it was a rat, or maybe just the house settling. But when I went downstairs to check, I found something much worse. The walls were covered in deep scratches, gouged into the plaster, as if something, or someone, had been clawing at it, trying to escape. But that wasn't the worst part. Above the scratches, carved in the same jagged lines, were words. Words I knew weren't there before. "You will pay." My uncle was the first to die. They said he fell down the stairs in the middle of the night, that it was a tragic accident. But I know what really happened. I saw his face before they covered it up. His eyes were wide open, filled with terror, as if he had seen something. Something that shouldn't have been there. After he died, things escalated. The whispers became louder, more insistent. The footsteps started, slow, deliberate, like someone walking through the house in the dead of night. Every time they happened, I would freeze, listening, praying it would stop, but it never did. My aunt, who had locked Ella in the basement so many times, began hearing voices. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but the whispers followed her everywhere. In the bathroom, in her bedroom, even in her car. Always the same voice. Always Ella. She begged for it to stop, but it didn't. She started sleeping with the lights on, but that didn't help either. One morning, I found her sitting on the floor of her room, her eyes wide and vacant, mumbling to herself. She wouldn't look at me, wouldn't respond. All she did was repeat the same phrase over and over. "She's coming for me. She's coming for all of us." The rest of the family didn't fare much better. My cousins, once so full of life, started looking hollow and gone. They hardly spoke anymore, their eyes darting around the house as if they were waiting for something. I knew what they were waiting for. Ella, it was only a matter of time before she came for them too. And then there's me. I thought I'd be spared that Ella wouldn't come for me because I had tried to protect her. I wasn't like the others. I loved her. But lately, I've been hearing something too. At first it was just a whisper in the dark, something I could ignore. But now it's louder, clearer. I hear it in my dreams, and sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night with the feeling that someone is standing over me, watching. Last night I woke up to find a message scratched into the wall beside my bed. "I'm coming," and I know she is. Thanks for tuning in to today's horror story. If you have a horror, mystery, or haunting story you'd like to share, send it to us at Urban America Horror. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode when we upload it. We'll always be here waiting for your next horror story.